Hey guys, Tarket here, and I want to do a brief build guide for my recommended league starter for Prophecy, which is the Voltaxic Lightning Arrow Champion. Now, the reason why this is my recommended league starter for anyone either completely fresh to the league, who wants to try out hardcore for the first time, or just someone who wants a very cheap and efficient build for hardcore, is 1. Safety, 2. Insane single target damage, and 3. Reflect immunity. Now, as someone who's killed themselves to Elemental Reflect as Lightning Arrow at the start of the league, I was very eager to get back onto the Lightning Arrow hype train without absolutely melting myself. Now, why do I say the Lightning Arrow hype train? As Mathil very kindly reminded us all, the interactions between Pierce, Frostwall, and Lightning Arrow is absolutely insane. The way that Lightning Arrow works is you fire a charged arrow at the target, you fire a Lightning Arrow, causing it to be struck by a bolt of damage, which damages nearby enemies. So, pretend that Zana is your boss. I shoot once, it AoEs, everything gets hit. Don't think of Frostwall as a wall, think of Frostwall as a line of monsters, because that's how it interacts. I shoot, all of these are actually monsters as far as the game is concerned, it causes overlap. So, we take a tanky boss, we absolutely cover it in Frostwalls, fire once, it's now a dead boss. Pretty OP. Now, obviously, with reflect damage, not so OP because you're dead. Well, you just go Voltaxic. Voltaxic got nerfed from 100% of Lightning to Chaos to 60% of Lightning to Chaos. It's still an insane single target damage bow, and because of the nerf, it's ridiculously cheap. You'll see this is a +1 to maximum power charge corruption. I paid 15 Chaos for this, and it has the top lightning damage roll. You can pick up average rolls Voltaxics for like 2 to 3 Chaos. It's really dumb. Drill Neck is really OP. Drill Neck costs like 1 to 2 Chaos because everyone thinks that Drill Neck builds are bad now because everyone's moved off the hype train. What you can do is buy up millions of these, spam corrupt them, try and get, +1 additional arrows or leech or whatever. Basically, the build's really cheap. Because we do loads of chaos damage, we also get to poison. Snakebite gloves are really cheap. Now, the way that snakebite gloves work is while at maximum frenzy charges, attack poisons enemies. You also get reduced frenzy charge duration per frenzy charge. This is a slight negative. Basically, all it means is we don't pick up frenzy charges on the tree. Cap out at 3 to 4 frenzy charges. You can easily maintain it. You're absolutely fine. Now, this build became even safer when they introduced Kintsugi. Previously, with evasion style builds, you were basically forced to go Lightning Coil or Comb's Heart. Kintsugi is still cheap-ish. They're about 30 or 40 Chaos, thanks to Yoji and Ziggy hyping them up for a very good reason. On the last set of Exile, so the prices did go up. These were like 5 Chaos at the start of the league, but whatever. So basically, you're looking at an incredibly tanky and insane single target DPS build, at a fairly budget package. You're looking at, let's say, 5 Chaos, which is a lot for a Voltaxic. You can pick up a bad one for 1, but let's say 5 Chaos for a Voltaxic. Let's say you buy 3 Drill Necks, you want to buy some Corruptions, and you buy the gloves. So let's say you buy 3, that's 3 Chaos, buy the gloves, that's 2 Chaos. So for 10 Chaos, you've gotten 3 chances at corrupting a Drill Neck, and you have your core setup. Rat's Nests, best in slot helm for this build. They're about, 10 to 20. So let's say, you've paid 25 Chaos for all of your main offensive stuff, and that's buying multiple Drill Necks. Then when it comes to the chest piece, you have a few options. Before we get into why Cost Freeze Will isn't OP for this build, people go immediately, Cost Freeze Will, it must be amazing for this target. It gives you +1 curses. Curses are great. It gives you poison. It means you can drop the gloves. Cost Freeze Will is not a very good defensive item for this style of character. Evasion bow builds run the issue of being on the right side of the tree. They usually cap out about 180 life. This build is 182 life without jewels, which is quite a lot. And they're aggro, so they've got like a decent-ish buffer of health, but when they get hit, they die. Well, you need a chest which, fixes that problem. Kintsugi gives you the 20% less damage taken if you've not been hit recently. Fun fact, this does also apply to Reflect, and Reflect doesn't count as a hit. So with this, plus this, you really do not take any Reflect damage, and it's just really solid. Because of all the evasion scaling on our tree, we're currently sat at 13.6k evasion, which is quite a lot for a build which doesn't run Grace, and doesn't have insane invasion gear. So, yeah. The increased evasion on this is also really solid. It has a lot of natural synergy with Champion, because Champion is just full of evasion armor nodes. Evasion armor, evasion armor, increased evasion armor on low life, evasion armor, evasion armor, evasion armor. Like, it has a lot of natural synergy with Champion. Another reason why Champion is my go-to rather than Deadeye is the build already does enough damage. It's an evasion bow build. You want to not get one shot. Fortify. This is just flat damage reduction. Kintsugi, flat damage reduction. Lightning Coil, flat damage reduction. Run, you know, a Basalt, run Taste of Hates. You suddenly become a really tanky character with a good life pool. But going back to chess. So Cossary's Will out of the side. I would recommend, personally, a Belly of the Beast for leveling, if you can afford one. You can equip the level 46, and it gives you just a lot of raw life. It makes your early tree a much more sustainable, and then you can replace it later on for either a Kintsugi or a Lightning Coil to reduce those chunks. You could alternatively go Comb's Heart. Since it's Frostwall LA, we don't need a second 5-link, but I much prefer going either Lightning Coil or Kintsugi, and in hardcore anyway, they are cheaper than a Combs. So, you know, this is my go-to preferred option. One thing I will quickly say for leveling is in Prophecy, we have a lot of options for overpowered bows or leveling. There's the Doomfletch Prism, which basically what it does is it has like some base fizz damage. The standard Doomfletch was you get a chunk of that as LE damage randomly. Doomfletch Prism, which is the upgraded Fader version, gives you as every element, which basically reads as you get a best in slot bow that you can equip at level 40, which costs you a couple of chaos. You can alternatively use a Death's Opus, which is the upgraded Death's Harp, which is again, you get a best in slot crit bow, which you can equip at like level 44. Yeah, use those. I recommend using a Wrath's Reach from level 18. Go Split Arrow to level, Wrath's Reach. The second you get to 31, slap in Pierce. You'll be around about here on the tree where you get your piercing shots. Good times, get the Drill Neck at 36, you're set. So you've got a really easy leveling process, very cheap character, very, very good. I'll quickly cover my Flasks links, and we'll go into a big build breakdown. The Flasks, again, can be done fairly budget. One thing I say is set is you must have one of these, you must have one of these, and I would strongly recommend having one of these. Iziri's Promise is just very efficient. It gives you a massive chunk of Chaos Res, which is good against a lot of scary Chaos monsters in the game, of which there are quite a few. It's helpful in quite a few map bosses. It gives you a good bit of Leech, and it gives you some damage. So it's Leech, damage, survivability. Cool. Diamond Flask is set for this build. You have to have a Diamond Flask. You don't have crazy high crit chance, you have enough crit chance, but the Diamond Flask basically reads as your critical strike chance is lucky. What this means is your critical strikes roll twice. You can pseudo think of it as doubling your crit chance. It's not exactly that, but it's basically you crit nearly every time when you have this active, especially when you have some power charges flowing. Run a Diamond Flask. Basalts, I think you're stupid not to run one. I've seen a lot of people not run them, and they go greedy and run like Onslaught Flasks. I strongly recommend a Basalt. You know, it's kind of like a mini Taste of Hate. It's really cheap. When it comes to unique flasks, Vessel of Vinctar is obviously pretty good for this build. It's a bunch of Leech, a bunch of lightning damage. It's really expensive. Previously mentioned, Taste of Hate is obviously really good for this build. It's really expensive. It's not really needed. You can buy one of these for like 3 Chaos. You can buy one of these like an Alk, maybe a Chaos, just for a white one, roll it yourself. They're just so much power. Make sure you run them, guys. Just make sure you run them. Your links for your Lightning Arrow setup should be Lightning Arrow. I did Lightning, funnily enough. I originally thought you'd run increased crit strikes, but the Diamond Flask is really enough for that. Added Lightning just gives you a bunch of raw damage, gives you more Chaos, gives you more poison. It's super efficient. Pierce. Pierce is more proj damage. We run a Pierce build. You have to run that. GMP, pretty good. GMP is better than LMP because it gives you more overlaps when you do your Frostwall shenanigans. It's just, yeah, you want to run GMP. If you can't afford the mana costs early on, you can use LMP, but you want to get on GMP as soon as possible. Wed is a massive damage. Massive. Yeah. Sorry. Wed is a massive bunch of more damage. Run Wed. For a 6-link, you have a few options. You can run Increased Crit Strikes Gem, Crit Strikes Damage, slower proj, which is a more multiplier, it does crazy scaling for all of your other stuff, or faster attacks. Pick, test, see which one you prefer. I haven't had much opportunity to test out the 6 link, but one of those 4 would be absolutely solid. Next, most important setup is obviously the Frostwall setup. Frostwall Spell Echo is set, you have to have that to make Frostwall somewhat, not clunky. I also think that Blood Magic has to be set and forget in a Frostwall setup. If you don't run Blood Magic, once you have your auras on, you run the risk of accidentally killing yourself. So we go, big scary boss, oh no, I need to kill it. Spam, spam, spam. I didn't look at my mana pool. Whoops, I've now oomed myself. By throwing Blood Magic on there, you never run the risk of accidentally ooming yourself. It just makes the build a lot smoother. It just works. I would always run Blood Magic. You can take it off if you want to. Increased duration. You don't need increased duration. Obviously it helps because it means your frost will last longer. You could run Blind, funnily enough. Blind is somewhat helpful because it gives your Frostwall a chance to blind. It does a tiny bit of cold damage. You generally put it on scary rares and bosses. You could also run faster casting, whatever. But basically, you need this 3 link. Next big one is your Curse on Hit setup. I'm a big fan of having Curse on Hit as automated and manual. What I mean by that is I have Curse on Hit with Herald of Thunder and Frenzy. So you have Curse on Hit, Assassin's Mark, we're a crit build. This helps our low crit chance. It gives us extra crit damage. It's just 10 out of 10. Herald of Thunder automatically just, does all the work for you. Feels good, man. Frenzy for single target. Apply it on the boss. Cool. It's also a nice way of maintaining frenzy charges for your Snakebite gloves. It just sort of works. While we're on it, again, Rat's Nest, super important. It gives you attack speed, it gives you global crit chance. Buy a Rat's Nest as soon as you can. This is just a whatever setup. I'm running Wrath because I need to fit it in somewhere in my gear. Ice Golem. I like having Blind on my Ice Golem. It just helps again on single target, makes the Ice Golem feel somewhat less clunky, and Blink Arrow. You don't need faster attacks or faster proj on your Blink Arrow. It's kind of fast enough already. If you want to, you can, but basically just this is your random heap of gems. Cast on damage taken, increased duration, Immortal Cool. This is set. You always want that on nearly every single build. And then you throw in your Vaal Aura. Make sure your build has a Vaal Aura. I personally recommend Vaal Haste over Vaal Grace. I was just running Vaal Grace because I was doing like tier 8s and 9s at a low level. Started mapping like 72 or something, and I just want to be somewhat safe in hardcore. Fun fact, this character died to Jungle Valley Chaos EK Chain. Unsummon your Ice Golems when you run chain maps, because what happened is he got hit by EK, it bounced on me, bounced off him, bounce, 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 dead. Yeah. Bit salty about that one still. Wed, very important on your jewellery. I know we've kind of gone off link topic, but I'll just quickly break down the gear. Make sure you have Wed, make sure you have as much life as possible. Getting a tiny bit of int is quite nice somewhere, because we do need int requirements for our added lightning damage, our Assassin's Mark, Herald. You don't need to level up the Frostwall, but you need int for some of your stuff. Just keep that in mind. Bell again, Wed, life, fix, resist, need be. Drill neck already covered. Right, let's break down the tree. Now, one thing I'm going to mention is this is actually a really smooth tree to level with. You can see that it has a pretty decent amount of stats all round. It is a little bit low on the int, but it's very easy to fill in. And you just have a really pleasant time leveling as this tree. Again, as I mentioned, try and use some good, unique bows to make the leveling process a bit smoother. But for early leveling, this is sort of what I'd recommend. Come through the attack speed, get the 2-pointer, skip this, you grab that later. Come down to Art of the Gladiator, pick up Bravery, skip that, pick that up later. Come rush to Fury Bolts. Come down, you have 2 options. You can either rush to Golem's Blood, or you can rush Mana Leech for some early sustain. Pick that up later. This is also a really solid 2-pointer early on because it gives you a bunch of all-res, and the evasion scaling is just kind of nice with this build. Whatever. So pick up one of these 2. Come through, pick up the one you didn't pick up when you get to this point. Ignore these nodes for now. Pick those up later. If you feel like you need life at this point, pick up the life. If not, keep going forward. I would highly recommend picking up Druidic Rite early. It's just really solid. It gives you some more max mana. It helps a little bit with your mana cost, but that's not the important bit. 20% increased flask charges gained, 20% increased flask effect duration is really, really good. Just think of this node as 20% flask, think of this as 20% flask. You would just take those nodes if that's all it read. The mana's just a nice little, thing on top. Also, early on, it helps quite a lot with your mana costs. I'd recommend picking these up early. Once you get to here, you have two options. You can also pick up this int node early on to help with, the costs of your auras. You can either come up left to get a little bit of attack speed and get some strength and int to help with your costs, also a little bit more flask charge support. Or you come up right and you try and rush to acro and piercing shots. Personally, I just rushed right. You can pick up piercing shots around about, early 30s, which is pretty good synergy because you get the pierce gem at 31, you get jewel neck at 36. At 36 is when you want to transition out of leveling with split arrow into leveling with pierced LA. But come rush up the right, ignore the crit, get acros for 1 point when you're next to it, ignore those, get those later. Come up here, rush this. Once you have this, you have a few options. You can either fill in the life nodes you skipped, life in here, life here, life here, down, point here, point here, point here. If you feel like you need it, do that. If you feel like you don't need that, then you can start working towards picking up all the crit nodes. When it comes to picking up the crit nodes, it's one of those things if you kind of want to pick up all of your crit at once, because if you don't have very much crit, then the crit's kind of useless. Once you start reliably critting, crit is really good. Personally, I'd recommend just going for the life all at once, but you can rush the crit early if you want to. Once you've picked up, the life and crit and stuff that you've been missing, then you want to, come up this way. You can get this jewel early if you need the int requirements. I wouldn't, but if you need the int requirements and you have a really solid jewel, go for it. Come in through here, grab this for the all res. You need the all res. This will be the sort of early merciless. Grab this for 1 point. It's pretty good. It gives you some chaos damage scaling, which scales, a good portion of your Voltaxic damage. Don't pick this up until you have your Voltaxic. Gives you some increased fizz damage, which is kind of good, just for the tiny bit of fizz you have. Gives you movement speed, which is good. Gives you some dex. It's just pretty good. Come in through here, get cold hearted calculation. Get this later because you probably just want to rush through the crit and pick up the life and grab this near the end. Same with all these jewels. So all the jewels, basically fill them in when you have a good jewel. If you have a really solid jewel early on, which gives you life, all res, crit chance, global crit multi, lightning damage, something like that, go for it. If you don't have it, just pick it up at the end. Assuming you're being super budget and you have absolutely no jewels at all, you can cut all of the jewels out of the build, which gives you a lot of points to play with. You could alternatively come up this way and pick up Written in Blood and pick up Arcing Blows, which isn't terrible. You could try rushing up to Scion, filling in these life nodes if you wanted to, which sort of works, but personally just save up and get some good jewels. Jewels are really OP. When it comes to the Ascendancy, as previously mentioned, we are a champion. The whole point of going champion is for UR Fortify. UR Fortify is pretty overpowered. It's just flat damage reduction. It works very nicely with stuff like Taste of Hate, Basalt, Evasion, Kintsugi, Lightning Coil. It just makes playing an evasion build much safer. I'd recommend while leveling just skip normal lab and do normal and cruel lab together to rush this. Now when you get your Merc and your Uber labs, do you play solo, in which case rush First Strike? Do you play in a group, in which case rush Inspirational? This actually gives us quite a nice bit of damage. For solo play, this basically reads as 50% increased damage because of that little bit they've added at the end there. Your hits permanently intimidate enemies that are on full life, so that's basically 50% damage, and this is basically 35% damage. So you get a lot of damage here. One thing I will say is if this is softcore and you really don't care about being super tanky, I'd recommend doing this as a Deadeye, and in which case you want to come up through here, pick up Endless Munitions, pick up Fast and Deadly, and then you have 2 points to play with. You can either go for Powerful Precision or Rupture. Personally, I would go for Rupture, just because it gives a little bit of utility with the moving or bleeding doesn't cause you to take extra damage, which is kind of nice. Gives you some crit chance and some crit multi against bleeding enemies, which is kind of nice. You can go for ricochet and go chain and drop the whole pierce thing, but the whole point of this build is the pierce, so I wouldn't really recommend it. But still, champion is what I stick by. Anyway, one thing that I did realize that I forgot is for bandits, you want to go for oak for the HP. In cruel, you can go for attack speed or skill point. I went for the attack speed. And in masters, you can go for power charge or frenzy charge. I go for the power charge because I want to boost my crit as much as possible. And going for the frenzy charge, as previously mentioned, is somewhat awkward with the snake bite gloves. I will leave a link to my profile down below where you can see all of this gear. I will also leave a link to my live stream where you can catch me and ask questions live and see what other builds I'm up to. If I have missed anything out, just leave the question down below and I'll get to it as soon as I can. Sorry if it was a bit rambly. Again, this has just come out of a 17-hour stream, so I'm a little bit brain dead in the face. Anyway, I'm Taki. Have a good day. Bye-bye.